Welcome to a fresh new year that is certainly already shaping up to be even more massive than the record-breaking year that we've just had. I hope you had some wonderful celebrations midweek because with 2025 now out of the way, everything is moving to the next level. As always, loads to catch you up on with all this magic going on with the first version 3 Starship preparing to fly, along with a lot more around the sites. A massive shift coming for the Starlink network took us all by surprise, and a bunch more to dive into here today.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Hey, Marcus House with you here, and a massive Happy New Year to you. You may expect that all the activity around Starbase had slowed right down for the holiday, but no, it has as always been a hive of activity. All our eyes are primarily focused now on the new launch site and the hardware rolling in. You may recall me recently mentioning the two tower arm actuators had been removed from Pad 2, even though SpaceX had already completed multiple high-speed catch test simulations mid-2025. Well, brand new actuators have been installed, and Sean picked up some neat close-up views of these new replacements. Wow, are they huge by comparison? Here are the old ones, and you can clearly see the diameter change is especially noticeable if you look at the shiny inner barrel. The new ones fit pretty snug in that outer barrel, and the immediate assumption may be that this would add more force and speed to the arm movements, but it is going to depend on the other parts that go along with these. The accumulators that drive them were removed along with the actuators, and we haven't seen those return yet. The big question is, will they install more of them or even larger ones than before? If not, the new actuators may actually operate slower with more accuracy due to that change in the barrel size, but if larger accumulators arrive, it may be that more fluid results in the same sort of arm movement speed that we've been seeing in the past. We'll keep a close eye on it to let you know how all this pans out. Now, the arm pieces that we had previously noted being delivered have been lifted and welded on, and it appears that they are adding some supports to the end of the arms, which is highlighted here. It's unclear at the moment if SpaceX are doing this to give the ends of the arms additional strength, or if they will be extending the rail itself to increase their landing margin. Checking in on the status of the ship quick disconnect arm system, we can see the prep work needed on the tower side before it can be mounted is ripping along. See these cryogenic swivel joints? They are mostly installed at this point and will feed the propellant right through to the end of the ship quick disconnect arm. To go with this, we've been watching SpaceX applying some of the finishing touches to the end of the arm itself being finalised up the road in the Sanchez area. In fact, Sean was there at the right time to see them installing one of the smaller gaseous return lines. Along with that, there are these two access platforms installed too, which swing around and in front. That allows the crew to access both the ship itself and the quick disconnect system. Now, workers have continued removing scaffolding slowly but surely from areas as they get checked off from the list around the orbital launch mount. We have this area here with the vents around the bunker and the right side of the mount being painted now clear. It will be interesting to see if all of this will get a coat of paint. Will they also paint the hoods black like the models that we've been shown so far? On the now removed Pad 1, that kept ablating away, so it seemed kind of like a mostly wasted effort. The water-cooled top deck should protect it a lot more, but we'll see how this goes after the first flight. The transformation of Pad 1 is now a little harder to see from the ground level considering they are already digging under that, but from an aerial perspective we can see here that they have been uncovering a lot of those sheet piles which were previously installed here after Flight 1. The gigantic rebar and concrete pile cap they are still constantly chipping away at. We're watching them pull that freed up material out and then pile it up here to be loaded into bins and removed off-site. Meanwhile, the old water deluge farm has been absolutely gutted since we last looked over the area. The 3 large storage tanks are now gone and shipped off to the port of Brownsville. Along with that, almost all of the high-pressure storage tanks and manifolds are also missing. In fact, the last remaining parts aside from the pipes leading to the pad, which will be removed at a later time, is the 4 smaller water tanks over here. Over at the production site, we had a surprise rollout this week after a closure was posted. We initially thought that it may be time for Ship 39 to roll out, but that fooled us again because instead out rolled a brand new adapter section made up of a ship engine skirt and an interface for a can crusher cap. Again, Sean caught it all as this was making its way out onto Highway 4. Chameleon Circuit jumped back into action with us so that we could clearly show you how this section will be mated with the Booster 18.3 test tank. SpaceX has been running a whole series of various tests to make sure that their version 3 design is holding up in all the ways expected. The can crusher cap, if you're not aware, is placed on top and is pulled down to compress this brand new hot stage truss to and beyond those pressures experienced during flight. It's very similar to those tests that we saw in early 2023 to validate the very first hot stage design. This was lifted onto the B18.3 tank here on Friday, and Travis here was able to get a neat angle of this after installation. Zooming in, we can see the ship aft adapter has strain gauges of its own, so some testing of the ship structure is being done here too, and they are also probably intending on running some tests with the new clamps used at stage separation. Anyway, given that this wasn't Ship 39 rolling out, when may we see that happen? Well, the crew has been building a mountain of scaffolding around the base of Ship 39 to work on the heat shield, so it isn't moving just yet. Now, with Gigabay construction, we now have walkways installed for both back doors, and 3 of the tower cranes have extended for the next levels of construction. Self-stacking cranes really are quite genius. We can see just how this extension operation works in huge detail thanks to the great close-ups from the NSF team. This process removes the need for them to lower and raise the crane from the ground every time they want to climb to the next level, which saves a bunch of time. As it stands right now, Level 2 is pretty much complete and Level 3 is coming together fast. As always, thanks for being subscribed and watching along so that we get the ability to go out there and pick all this up. In the meantime, SpaceX isn't slowing down in the Sanchez area of the site when it comes to pumping out new ship transport stands. Already now the second is fully welded together and pieces for a third are sitting here for when this spot is freed up. We can also see that the parts for the second ship static fire stand have been placed here just beside the ship cryo stand. They should have more space to construct that here given all the work that is going on at Massey's. Speaking of, let's head right over there because a lot has happened since we watched the team roll back the 39.1 test tank. With the station clear after these tests were done to verify the engine skirt design for the version 3 ship, work could kick back into focus around the quick disconnect interface. That's still to be installed here, but does look to be the last stand to get this upgraded design. As always, thanks to the huge efforts by the RGV aerial photography team, we can all see everything here from above. Check out the static fire stand at the time. We could clearly see SpaceX actively lifting and installing the first of the vertical steel truss framework sections on the left side. Well, by this week, that had grown a lot more. We've been out to follow this every chance that we get, and already you can see that both sides were vertical with the connecting X-shaped supports to join them. The second level was then started on Tuesday, and we could already see what looked to be the connections for the larger black platform that we saw from above nearby. So far, this is following Chrome Kiwi's original thoughts here rather well, so that was some really nice sleuthing there. We speculated on what they may be intending on testing with this structure a few weeks back, but still, the purpose isn't entirely clear. The theory that this may be a system that helps test the ship-to-ship docking ports or something like that would make sense, but once we see the final height, this should become obvious. One thing is certain though, the new static fire stand at Massey's is by far a much more refined and intricate setup than what we have seen for the last version 2 ship. Now, just before the year closed out, you may have spotted that SpaceX now allows anyone to subscribe to their quarterly impact reports. Those of us that did received the first report just before Christmas, and it highlighted a number of areas of growth both in previous years and in the upcoming years. What blew me away more than anything here was the $13 billion being injected into the local economy in the area around Starbase and the Rio Grande Valley area. That, by the way, includes funding already thrown in since 2024, but also includes this year as well. With their new Star Factory and Gigabay facilities coming online, what was most notable here was the mention that they expect to double their current workforce from 4,000 to 8,000 by the end of 2026. That is crazy, and this process will be helped a lot with the recent developments up the road at the Rio West site, where they have been busy over the last year and a half getting a number of brand new homes built up. There is also, of course, the giant apartment and garage buildings over in the village, which will likely be done here within the year. Indeed, SpaceX has already turned into an absolute monster. There's been a lot of noise lately around SpaceX's potential to open up public trading, with insider information hinting at that eye-watering $800 billion valuation. IPO chatter started to bubble up all over social media. In many cases, the story that you are reading tends to get buried under layers of spin or bias, and that's why I have been using Ground News. When this SpaceX valuation news broke, Ground News lets me see instantly how widely it is being covered, who was covering it, and how differently it was being framed across the media landscape. At a glance, I can see the spread across left, centre and right-leaning outlets, how factual the reporting is rated overall, and whether certain perspectives are being underreported entirely. That matters because stories like this sit right at the intersections of spaceflight, money, politics and power. You can probably imagine how quickly this kind of story turns into speculation soup. Some outlets frame it as inevitable space dominance, others jump straight to criticism, and a few lean heavily into political or financial agendas depending on where they sit. Ground News pulls all of that together in the one place so that you are not locked into just the one narrative. I think just being able to step back, strip away the hype and understand what's actually going on before forming an opinion is super useful. They're independent and subscriber funded, so give it a try. You can in fact pick up the same plan that I am using for just $5 a month. Just visit ground.news/Marcus from the link in the description, or you can scan the QR code right there on screen. That's nearly half off, by the way, so if you are tired of one-sided news and want a better way to stay informed, check it out. Thank you, Ground News. Now, getting back to the Starship itself, there will be some critical milestones this year, and it is going to be very exciting seeing the first one fire up those version 3 Raptors once it is through its cryogenic testing. Peering over at the setup towards the back of the site for a moment, we had noted a few weeks ago that there were these HESCO barriers being raised to corner off an area which had these installed pipes. Well, more recently we can see exactly what this is for. Check this out. There are 4 separate bays here which each are equipped with 4 hoses. These can test up to 16 composite overwrapped pressure vessels, or COPVs, at a time on these racks. We've actually seen these racks moving around in the ring yard here previously thanks to Lab Padre's rover camera, and then later moving back and forth from Massey's thanks to NSF. These have been mostly transported vertically, it seems, but there are also wheels on the side of the stands if they want to transport them horizontally. Now, the obvious speculation as to why SpaceX are checking all of these out is due to the ground testing failures with both Ship 36 and Booster 18. COPVs obviously don't fail gently, as we've seen, so doing some added testing to these prior to them being installed must be a critical step right now. If you were watching closely around the time the new Ship 39 had all of its COPVs removed and replaced, you may have spotted these boxes of brand new ones laying towards the far east side of Massey's, which were then gone in the next set of RGV shots. Speculative as this may be, it seems like all of Ship 39's old COPVs were removed and placed beside the Megabay due to them potentially being suspicious of a bad batch. SpaceX has, I suspect, simply ordered a brand new batch and are testing them as well so that they are personally verifying each before being installed into the vehicle. These lightweight COPVs used on Starship are made to operate within an industry temperature standard of -40 to 65 degrees Celsius or -40 to 149 degrees Fahrenheit, and can rapidly heat up and cool down when being filled or drained. I think it's also worth noting that these are installed against a cryogenic wall of liquid oxygen, and they also need to endure the heat of entry, so they are scrutinising these to every degree they can. So yes, with the end of the year wrapped up, we had that final tally of awesomeness shared by SpaceX as we rang in the new year. In 2025, 165 Falcon launches along with the 5 Starship flight tests. As was shared here by Steve and then reposted by Elon, SpaceX obviously set a new record for launches in a year, but at the same time launched more rockets in 1 year than Space Shuttle, Apollo and Gemini programs did in their entire combined history. Falcon alone placed more than 3,800 spacecraft into orbit. A lot of those are Starlink, of course, and what is amazing there is that they have passed 9 million active users on the system. Along with that, the many rideshare payloads, lunar lander hardware, and national security missions that we know little about. With the 5 Starship flight tests, they pulled off the first ever super heavy reuse and finally got those dummy Starlink satellites to deploy for the first time. Impressive, right? Well, 2026 is going to be much bigger. Actually, a very intriguing update on the Starlink network dropped a few days ago. This is being reconfigured in a significant way this year for a few reasons. SpaceX will be lowering all satellites orbiting around 550 kilometers in altitude and bringing them all the way down to 480 kilometers. That means around 4,400 satellites will slowly shift through the year, which is a little under half of them up there. This is all incredibly complex, of course, and will take massive coordination with all the operators involved. Why are they doing this though? Well, we are now approaching the next solar minimum in a cycle that lasts around 11 years. Less solar activity actually means that the density of our atmosphere slightly decreases, which results in less drag on all the satellites in low Earth orbit. Lowering these satellites will increase drag on them, which you may think is a bad thing, but each Starlink satellite has a planned lifespan anyway, so this simply recorrects for the opposite effect caused by the solar minimum. There are some much bigger benefits though. Lowering these satellites increases safety, and this is because at that altitude, the number of debris objects and other planned satellite constellations are significantly lower, so this is a big reduction in the chances of collisions. With the altitude lowered by 70 kilometers, the latency is also slightly lower, which means faster connection speeds. In the entire constellation, there are only 2 dead satellites in orbit. Even still, if any do die, we want there to be a good protection in place. At a lower altitude, if a satellite does fail for any reason, it should deorbit itself due to the increased drag much faster, which is also a great thing. In Elon's reply to me here on this, he mentioned the biggest advantage of all is a lower altitude means that the beam diameter can be smaller for a given antenna size, which essentially means that Starlink will be able to serve a higher density of customers on the ground. Falcon 9 news for the week has been comparatively slim. The last Falcon 9 flight that was planned for 2025 may have been vertical at Pad 4E in California to get ready for flight with the Cosmos SkyMed mission, but problems were soon announced with SpaceX standing down to look into a ground system problem. That was almost a week ago and they had pushed that launch into Sunday. Well, no. Sunday came and went with another update saying that they needed some more time to tinker around with the ground system and test that it all worked as expected. That was then pushed again, taking us all the way to just last night, with the launch finally heading off on Friday evening. Vandenberg lit up there as the CSG-3 mission roared off with booster 1081 blasting out of the atmosphere for its 21st time. There is the first stage separation of the year for Falcon, no shot of the fairing separation for whatever reason, but a moment later there was the view of the satellite from the second stage. Now this was flown just after sunset, so this was also an opportunity to pick up the first space jellyfish of the year. Well, William did just that, and I suspect there are plenty more where this came from. This is only a small satellite, so the booster had plenty of margin to make a full return back to the launch site. Entry burn there, and a time-lapse of the landing itself coming into touchdown at landing zone 4. As always, making that look too easy, and back to the second stage, engine cut off a moment later. That meant that we were just left to watch the beautifully lit up deployment just after the 13-minute mark. This is an Earth observation satellite for the Italian Space Agency, which will form part of a reconnaissance constellation using synthetic aperture radar. I think it's also worth a special mention of the Dragon cargo on the CRS-33 mission. 3 days before the end of the year, it fired up those unique reboost thrusters for another 19 minutes to once again boost the International Space Station into a higher orbit. That, by the way, was actually Dragon's 5th reboost, so it is a success story that has kind of gone a little under the radar. They have just one more planned before Dragon returns to splashdown this month. These are only subtle orbit raises, of course, given the size of the station, but this one in particular raised the orbit by about 2.5 kilometers at the apogee and 3 kilometers at the perigee, so raising both the lowest and highest points in the orbit. This is all great news because these successful boosts are paving the way for the big deorbit mission at the end of the station's life around 2030. Axiom Space just dropped a few more slick behind-the-scenes views of their next-generation lunar spacesuit this week. The AxEMU seen here right down to the stitching in the fabric is, of course, the suit meant to take astronauts back to the moon's surface, this time aiming for near the South Pole on Artemis 3. They've been sharing quite a bit on this lately. They've completed the first uncrewed thermal vacuum test of the spacesuit successfully, and in that they were running it through tests that not only simulate the vacuum, but also the harsh temperatures that they would expect to see in a real mission. It's great to see the thermal performance holding up to all that scrutiny, and it's much more complex than it all seems. The layered construction of the materials, the way the joints are designed to move with all these pressure differences, it's hard to make something both flexible and durable enough to hold up with all the various forces applied to it over a long period of wear time. So there you have it, my friends, the first video of 2026 all wrapped up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, the subscribe button down there does not press itself. If you want to continue with more space goodness, do us a huge favour and smash this one. With all the holidays going on, many of you may have missed it. Thanks for watching all this way through. I hope you had a wonderful new year. I will see you all in the next video.